The Legend of Zelda has given me some of my favourite moments in gaming, epic battles, unforgettable music, and worlds that I never want to leave. But even in a legendary franchise like this one, not every game is flawless. Some entries, while loved by many, just don't hit the same mark for everybody. And today we're going to dive into those games and we're going to look at the most overrated Zelda games in the series, according to the Triforce Times community. Well, if you enjoyed the video, then hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Trifroce Times, and stick around to the end of the video for an exclusive offer to channel members. Okay, before we dive into the games, let's have a look at the overrated label first of all. So, calling a Zelda game overrated does not mean it's bad. In fact, most of the games mentioned in this video are still really good, legendary games, epic games, incredibly ambitious and important to this series' evolution. But overrated means something else entirely. It's about how the conversation around the game sometimes overshadows the actual experience, the nostalgia, the critical acclaim, the fan devotion. It can all build a reputation that not every player agrees with. So this isn't just my opinion. I went looking for what Zelda fans had to say as well. So the people who've played these games loved them, hated them, and in some cases still don't understand the hype. From divisive dungeon design to forgettable music, bloated quests to frustrating mechanics, these are the games that, even in the eyes of devoted fans who love The Legend of Zelda, may not deserve the pedestal that they've been placed upon. Well, a week or so ago, I did a video about the most underrated Zelda games in the series, and a very interesting conversation sparked in the comments. A lot of people wanted to talk about the overrated games. So that's what I did. I put another call out to the Triforce Times community, and I asked them what the most overrated games in the series were. So thank you to everybody from the Triforce Times community for submitting your entries for the most overrated Zelda game in the series, and the results are very interesting, and we're going to dive into them now. Well, first of all, we've got Breath of the Wild. So when Breath of the Wild launched in 2017, it was hailed as a masterpiece. Revolutionary, genre-defining, and the future of open-world games. Critics gave it nearly perfect scores, fans spent hundreds of hours exploring every mountain, every shrine, finding every Korok seed, but in the years since, a growing number of Zelda fans have started to ask a pretty tough question. Is it actually as great as we all said it was? Some fans feel Breath of the Wild sacrificed what made previous Zelda games truly magical. So, Triforce Times community member Sparkleful Paladin put it, "Yeah, well, it was fine and I mostly enjoyed it, but in my opinion, it lost a lot of the magic of what made a Zelda game great." One of the biggest criticisms centres around the shrines, which many found repetitive and quite soulless. So while some were clever, some others felt like filler, mechanical puzzles with little atmosphere or connection to the world. And when it came to the Divine Beasts, what should have been memorable dungeon experiences felt strangely interchangeable. So, Sparkleful Paladin once again says all the Divine Beasts felt the same, and that was a sentiment echoed across the community. So according to fans, another major point of disappointment was the music. Zelda has always used music not just in the background but as storytelling. Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Majora's Mask and Skyward Sword all put instruments to the heart of the experience. Breath of the Wild just didn't. So for players like Sparkleful Paladin, this absence was especially painful. Music being important is honestly one of my favourite parts of other Zelda games. So even the much praised exploration and freedom weren't immune from critique. So many players felt that the rewards for venturing off the beaten path were underwhelming, and the sheer volume of the Korok seeds, felt like busy work rather than meaningful content. So 75% of Breath of the Wild is just like playing hide and seek with a bunch of meaningless Korok seeds, said Shadow Wizard 224. Well, the dungeons and the boss fights also grew criticism from lacking in variety, with Gaming Reinvented summing up saying, it's a solid open world game, but it is deeply flawed. To be clear, these fans aren't saying that Breath of the Wild is a bad game. Very far from it. What they're saying is that for all its innovations, it left behind core Zelda traditions that many players deeply value, structured dungeons, strong musical identity, and a sense of narrative momentum. It's not that Breath of the Wild is unworthy of praise, but rather the conversation around it has sometimes drowned out its legitimate flaws. Okay, next up, this one is going to get spicy, so this one is Ocarina of Time. So it's impossible to talk about Zelda without mentioning Ocarina of Time. Often cited as one of the greatest games ever made, it revolutionised 3D action-adventure gameplay and shaped the blueprint for dozens of titles that followed. But as time has passed, a number of fans have started to re-examine Ocarina's legacy, and not everyone is convinced it still deserves the universal praise. So one fan, Gigi Burtz, didn't hold back and said, absolutely Zelda 64, it dismisses yet co-ops all of A Link to the Past's achievements and yet brings nothing to the table. Its graphics and story are 100,000% mid. Well, that is absolutely scathing, Gigi Burtz, but I like it. For players like this, Ocarina feels like a downgrade from its 2D predecessor, A Link to the Past, a game that many consider tighter, more polished, and more imaginative. Even beyond comparisons, some players don't find it engaging. It has never held my attention to even get to the first dungeon, Gigi Burtz continued. Well, this isn't an isolated opinion, so Frank Yeager 54 echoed the sentiment by saying, Ocarina of Time was boring to me back then, and it's boring now. Now, for some, the game's pacing is too slow and the early hours too tedious and the world, while groundbreaking in its time, remember this was 1998, it feels sparse by modern standards. Still, fans of the game were quick to jump to its defence with Shadow Wizard 224 countering. Saying it didn't introduce anything is kind of silly when it literally introduced Z targeting, as well as the introduction of Ganondorf, Epona, the Gerudo, the Peaceful Zoras, and also the Gorons too. It is a fair point, Ocarina was incredibly innovative for its time, but that is exactly what some critics argue, that much of its praise comes from what it represented in 1998, almost 30 years ago, not how it plays today. Ultimately, the claim that Ocarina of Time is overrated isn't about denying its historical importance, it's about whether the legacy still holds up over scrutiny. For some long-time players, Ocarina feels more like a relic rather than a relevant masterpiece. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the comments section after going through Ocarina of Time there, so if you feel strongly after that, please vent your opinions down there in the comments. We'd love to hear from you, and let me know what you think is the most overrated Zelda game in the series. But next up, we're going to move on to another one, and this one is Majora's Mask. So for many Zelda fans, Majora's Mask is the dark horse of the franchise. A cult classic praised for its emotional depth, surreal atmosphere, and time-based mechanics. It's often called underrated, especially compared to its more conventional sibling, the Ocarina of Time, but in recent years a growing group of players have begun to push back on that narrative, arguing that Majora's Mask might actually be overrated. A great idea wrapped in a frustrating execution. One of the most common complaints is that Majora's Mask simply isn't fun to play. The time loop mechanic, while thematically brilliant, creates anxiety and repetition, so love the story and the music, Dom Cruz admits, but it's a bit of a chore to play. That tension between the concept of the gameplay shows up repeatedly. So Snow Elf 893 confesses, I feel so bad about this because it's not a terrible game overall, but once I start I find I'd rather go and watch a video about it for the vibe instead. Well, the early game, particularly the first dungeon, seems to be a major stumbling block. I've tried playing it several times and I never got further than the first dungeon, says TimG2727. I just don't think it's fun to play a Zelda game on a timer. I've also never been a big side quest person, and that is one of the key issues. Much of Majora's Mask's charm is tucked away in optional content, meaning if you're not talking to NPCs or scouring Termina for mask-based rewards, the main quest can feel surprisingly thin. So even those who like the game conceptually often struggle to enjoy it moment to moment. I do love the story, writes Snow Elf 893, but it's easy to miss something for a side quest and it's quite frustrating. The game's rigid 3-day cycle requiring you to constantly reset time can lead to repetitive gameplay and lost progress, especially for those underprepared or exploring without a guide. You know, that is not to say fans don't admire Majora's Mask's ambition. Many still praise its haunting tone, the rich symbolism, and emotional storytelling, but as more players revisit Majora's Mask or play it for the first time through the lens of modern Zelda standards, some are realising it's a lot more polarising than its reputation suggests. It's a game that you respect more than you replay, a title whose cult status may be partly fueled by its uniqueness rather than its accessibility or enjoyment. Well, those three games there are the most frequently mentioned when I asked about the most overrated Zelda games in this series, but we do have some other games as well. So while Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask tend to dominate the conversation about Zelda's most overrated entries, other games in the franchise aren't immune to criticism either. Both Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, despite their passionate fan bases, have their detractors, some of whom believe these titles are praised more for their presentation or nostalgia rather than the actual gameplay. So take Twilight Princess, for example, often described as the gritty Zelda. It was designed in direct contrast to the bright, cartoony style of Wind Waker, but that tonal shift did not work for everybody. So Dusty Bees 6308 said, "So while I know three people who claim it's their favourite, it's likely my least favourite of the 3D Zeldas. Its pacing is far too stop and go due to the Twilight Realm and Wolf Link. So many players found that switching back and forth between Wolf and Hylian form interrupt the flow of the game, making it feel disjointed and quite sluggish. And for a title that's meant to feel epic and mature, it instead left some feeling bogged down and quite disconnected." Well, then we got Wind Waker, a game that has undergone something of a reputation glow-up in recent years. So once criticised for its cartoon visuals, it's now beloved for that very style. But not everybody is on board. "So I've played Wind Waker for the first time recently," said Romulus879. "In all rankings I've seen, it ranks very high, but I didn't like it very much. You know, it's pretty mediocre. There's far too much sailing and you just wait and do nothing." You know, others echoed that complaint, noting the game often fails to clearly guide the player, turning progression into a guessing game. That slow traversal and vague direction, while immersive to some, felt tedious and empty to others. Well, despite these criticisms, it is worth noting that neither Twilight Princess nor Wind Waker are seen as failures. In fact, both have deep emotional cores, standout dungeons, and memorable characters. But for the fans who didn't grow up with them, who prefer tighter, more directed gameplay, the praise can often feel outsized. These are the fans who look past the art style or nostalgia and ask the harder questions. Does the gameplay still hold up? Or are we just remembering how they made us feel? Well, in summary, these criticisms aren't hating on the Zelda franchise. These opinions are love filtered through high expectations, and it just shows how the Zelda community doesn't agree on what the core of Zelda is anymore. Is it puzzles? Is it exploration? Is it lore? No Zelda game is bad, but some may not deserve the pedestal that they're on. So, in closing, which Zelda game do you think is the most overrated? I would love to hear from you. Let me know down there in the comments. Well, thank you to the Triforce Times community today for all of your input. Really appreciated. And once again, I'm looking forward to the comment section for this one. But as always, thank you so much for watching or for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Triforce Times. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Well, thank you so much for watching the video, but today I'd like to let you know about the Triforce Times store. If you like Triforce Times content and you want to get some merchandise, then browse the online store today. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and loads more in all shapes and sizes and colours. Also, if you didn't see something on the store that you want, then let me know in the comments. Comment on the video and let me know what you want to see in the merch store, and I will make it happen. So if you enjoy Triforce Times and want to go above and beyond to support, then the store is a great place to do that. And also, you're going to get some high quality merchandise as well, so check out the Triforce Times store today with a selection of merch below each video, and you can also check out the store link in the description if you'd like to browse the whole store. But this video is brought to you by Triforce Times Backstage. This is available through Patreon or YouTube membership, and you're going to get exclusive benefits, plus you'll be able to go above and beyond to support Triforce Times. Free content is core to Triforce Times, and you can continue to enjoy these videos that you know and love. However, if you want to enjoy the benefits like early access, our community Discord, shoutouts in the credits of videos, content polls and exclusive videos, then select the tier that is right for you and join Triforce Times Backstage today. So help me make Triforce Times be even bigger and better, plus you're going to get some added benefits for a small fee every month. Well, thank you for listening, and now it's time to go back to the video.